Hey guys, and welcome to Off the Cuff. Today I'm going to talk about working with constraints, game design and constraints. So I feel like this topic is a little bit common sense, yet it isn't. It's one of those things that everybody kind of knows that you have to do, yet when it comes down to the crunch, you don't actually do it. Especially when it comes to creative projects. I feel like it's common sense to know that when you start a project, that you've got to have certain roles so that project gets done. Things like, this is going to take a week, this is going to take 2 weeks, etc., etc. This has got this amount of budget, like there are things that upfront that your project needs, and it's got a set of rules and constraints, and you cannot step outside of those. However, when it comes to game design, especially with indies, one of the draws to designing games and being an indie developer is that you have the freedom to do anything. And that can be a very, very cool thing, but it can also be a very, very dangerous thing, because it allows you to then think that you should also be able to do everything. So I found myself, again, this is all me talking from experience. I'm a couple of weeks in to my 50 game, 7-day game goal, one every week. And I find that after changing my approach and thinking a little bit differently, it's much easier to design games when I really set up some strong rules at the start. I feel like telling yourself, this is the amount of assets this is going to use. I'm going to use this amount of randomization. I'm not going to go and create 7 backgrounds when really you only need 1, etc., etc. Then come things like power-ups and juice and all that sort of stuff that you put in a game. There comes a point of basically it becomes diminishing returns. You just don't need to put any more stuff in your game. And I find that sometimes doing less is more. A clean, simple game that works well and you don't need to go overboard explaining everything can be a lot more refreshing, a lot more lucrative, in my view anyway, especially when I play games. I feel like when something's clean, it draws me in more than something that's just popping in with things at me left and right and I don't really know what is happening. So personally, I do like the cleanliness and the minimalism when it comes to things, but at the same time, you do want to make it polished and have a little bit of juice here and there, but know where to draw the line. So actually plan it out. Have a really clear set of rules that you set out for yourself so you do get it done within the time limit. You set yourself a time limit, number of assets that you're going to be using. You're going to make sure that you are able to produce, if you're working with levels, a certain amount of levels in that time, etc., etc. Constraints are really, really, really important, and I do find that they also inspire creativity. I really feel like when you've got constraints and you're working with constraints in game design, it makes you be more creative with what you're creating. When you give yourself the freedom to do anything you want and you've got all the control schemes in the world, it ends up being a big mashup of everything. That can be a really cool thing if you're a AAA studio or something like that and you're working on something like GTA or whatever. However, if you're an indie developer, then not so much. I feel like giving yourself very, very tight constraints, and I know I keep repeating that word, really does inspire creativity and allows you to make something a little bit more interesting. So play with it, have a little think about how you can sort of plan your game at the start that will allow you to finish it in the time frame that you've set for yourself.
You kind of want to give things to yourself that enable you. And so it's like a project, you have a scope and you know exactly what it is you want to achieve, and when the start thing is, and when you finish it, like what the end goal in terms of your product is, and what the date is you've got to have it done by.
Yeah.
And then it kind of gives you that framework to work within, and when you start sort of going off piste a little bit, you can go, well, actually, hang on, like you said, in terms of adding value, does it add any value to the end result, or am I just satisfying? Like, is it ego? Is it a need to show off? Is it, what is it? Why do I need to include this? Is it actually going to give me anything?
They call
in
it
return?
feature creep in game design, where people just don't know when to quit, and they think, oh, another thing that I could add is this, and this, and this. And quite frankly, it's a project killer. It is. Most people don't finish projects. There's another topic I'm going to talk about soon, which is small versus big games, and where one versus the other, and what the advantages and disadvantages are of each. And it kind of ties into this one a little bit, but not really. So I'll talk about it a bit later. But
what would the fundamental thing be? Because you're a person that has made a start on so many games and has taken 4 months to finish a game, or almost got to the end of a game and thought, nah, I don't like this anymore.
Not being happy with it.
Yeah. So what is it like? You've gone from that to a complete. I'm going to use the word pivot, and you're going to laugh, but a complete pivot to someone who has reframed his thinking and has decided that, I'm going to make a game in 1 week. So you talk about constraints. So what would be the biggest constraint, or the biggest thing, or that you're using to be able to, keep yourself on the straight and narrow and make sure that by Sunday it's done?
One of the biggest things is assets, right? That's one thing. Then the other thing is focusing on a simple mechanic. And so far, I haven't been focusing on level-based games. So in the past, I would have been creating games that, maybe require a different mechanic and whatever for each level. However, now I work out a simple mechanic and I just progress it to be harder, that sort of thing. So that's one of the things. And I do want to experiment with other types of games. I really wanted to go for, with these 50, I really wanted to go for creativity, right? So, replayability, not also creativity, but replayability. So you can come back to them and play them again. Whereas my previous games, a lot of them were games that some of them you could replay, but most, my Flash games back in the day, but most of them were ones that you'd play once and you'd be done. And then there's no reason to come back. Whereas with the new ones that I'm making now, I just want to give this a go with the 50 and I see how it goes, and just, work on replayability, something that I really haven't done much in the past. But anyway, so the constraints are mainly assets and not putting in too much mechanics. Basically, if you put in too many mechanics, you're working on multiple games. And if I'm one guy, I do the graphics, I do the coding.
Sound effects.
Well, no, I don't. Well, yeah.
I hear you in here making all the sounds.
No, so the sound effects and stuff, usually I roll to free music and sound effects. But, but still, it's a lot of work for one person, and then doing all your own social media, things like that. So just remember that, guys. You are only one person. You only have one life. Get some stuff out there. No one, as one person, it is very hard to sit around and work on something for 6 months and having people wait for you. If you're gonna do that, at least release a version for people to play and alter it and add to it as people are giving you feedback. That's what I would say if you're gonna go that way. But it's kind of going off the topic of the constraints thing a little bit and more creeping into the big games thing. So with the constraints, guys, set your own way of working. Make sure you've got a plan and a set of limits right at the start, and try not to step outside of those, and it will really help you finish a project. I will talk to you guys again next time.